So, if you missed episode 33, we discussed IUDs, both hormonal and non hormonal. But I felt really called to expand on this topic a bit further and discuss other forms of birth control. In our culture, we tend to normalize taking birth control for everything from actual contraception to cycle related problems like heavy bleeding, cramping, and irregularity. In this episode, I want to examine what hormonal birth control actually does and the risks that, unless you sit down and read the little rice paper insert, you may not.
There are so many of us that are starting to question whether we're starting to transition through perimenopause. Maybe we're seeing changes in our energy. Maybe we're seeing a little more heat at night than we used to. And if our partner pulls the shoulder, we might be tempted to smother them with a pillow. Maybe you're feeling like your moods are all over the place and you're not sure why it's happening, or your cycles have changed in length from what you have come to see as a normal, predictable pattern. Whatever it is that's starting to make you question whether you are beginning your perimenopausal transition, I have the answers for you. Join me for Coming into Second Spring. I am offering this course live on September 20th from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern Time. This course is designed to take you through your journey between the ages of 34 and 40 on in your body, what you can expect from your perimenopausal journey, how to know when you're actually in menopause and you've made your transition, and what you can do about any symptoms that may be cropping up that aren't working so well for you. There is a link in the bio, so be sure to join us for Coming into Second Spring and walk into your perimenopausal journey empowered.
Hi, I'm Adrienne Irizarry. I'm an Eastern medicine practitioner who is passionate about women's health and helping women live their best lives. My goal is to put you in the driver's seat of your menstrual health, offering period solutions for a symptom-free life. Statements made in this program are for educational purposes only and not intended as a substitution for medical consultation or advice. We do not claim to diagnose, treat, or cure any diseases. This podcast is inclusive and welcomes all gender identities. The focus of the program is on biological function, and we will use the term women throughout, but it is referencing physiological and social challenges for biology, not identity. Come as you are, I am happy you're here and welcome all performances of identity. I hope you find something helpful in this show.
Welcome back to another episode of the Reproductive Rebel podcast. I want to continue our conversation around birth control. I am not start out by saying that I am very pro-informed consumer. And actually, one of the reasons I started Reproductive Rebel is because of the vast majority of people who, they would come through the doors of my practice, and it was really apparent that they had not been properly certain things that they had made decisions about. And as we were able to have a one-on-one conversation about it, they felt very differently about the decision that they had made, and they wanted to make a change. So here is where I feel like Reproductive Rebel comes in. You decisions about your body with all of the information that's available to you, whatever that decision is. Okay, so I don't want my episodes about birth control or whatever to come across as, oh, well, you shouldn't use this in general. And it's not that. It's the fact that there are obvious little side effects that come to a head that change lives, that create fertility challenges for people who use birth control for long periods of time and don't fully understand the choice that they're making. I was one of those people. I've seen hundreds of them. Here we go. This is what we're talking about today on Reproductive Rebel. So in episode 33, we discussed IUDs. Okay, if you didn't have a chance to check out that episode 33, we talk about IUDs. And I think that that's a really good one to start with because we talked about both the hormonal and good one to start with because we talked about both the hormonal and non-hormonal options. But I want to expand our look at birth control a bit further and discuss specifically hormonal forms of birth control. Now, while some of these risk factors, considerations, etc., are true, and were discussed in episode 33 regarding hormonal IUDs, I am more specifically talking about other hormonal options like implants and pills, for example. So, in our culture, we tend to normalize taking birth control for everything from acts to cycle related problems like heavy bleeding, cramps, cycle irregularity, etc. In this episode, I want to examine what hormonal birth control actually does and the risks that, unless you sit down and read that little rice paper insert that comes with the birth control pills, okay, that thankfully that insert is in there. That disclosure wasn't always in there. And I'm glad that it is. I remember reading my insert 100,000 years ago. I'm old, but I also didn't understand all of the implications and what it meant either. And all of the implications and what it meant either. And not all practitioners, when they prescribe it, are really good at taking the time because, medicine is a business. You've got 15 minutes to sit down with a person. You've got to rattle off everything that you need to rattle off, and then out the door they go. So I'm not demonizing that. I'm just saying that because of their limited time, disclosing the risk factors is not always top of mind for all practitioners. And so this is another reason why I feel like this episode is very important because you deserve to know what you're getting yourself. It's a risk you want to take, great. But if you're like, "Oh, I had no idea that that could potentially happen to me," then now you are able to take that information and run it through your own filter, check in with your body and go, "So does this feel aligned to me or not?" So I'm going to myth bust for a second. One of the biggest standings that women have about hormonal birth control is that it regulates the cycle. Oh my God. This is a point that makes me absolutely bonkers. You want to wind Adrian up? Let's talk about this one for a second. Man, if I had a nickel for every time I heard someone say, I was having fill in the blank issue, could have been heavy, and say, I was having fill in the blank issue, could have been heavy bleeding, could have been cramping, could have been my cycle was 36 days, then it was 25 days, then I didn't have one for a long time, whatever the issue was. And my doctor put me on birth control to regulate my cycle. If I had a nickel for every time I heard somebody say, I regulate my cycle for fill in the blank issue, I wouldn't have to work anymore because I would be filthy rich. Okay. This is not true. And I pause there for emphasis because I know for some of you, this notion might be rather revolutionary. So hear me out. Hormonal birth control does not regulate anything. I'm going to say it again because if this is the only gem that you take out of this episode, this is the one I hope you take with you. Hormonal birth control does not regulate anything. What it does do is suppress hormone communication in your body. It arrests your hormone communication, it stops it, so that you either don't ovulate at all or your uterine lining doesn't fully develop to support implantation, or in some cases, I'm thinking like Nexplanon, for example, it creates a thick mucousy barrier so that no implantation can take place. Okay? The medication is designed to interrupt a healthy. So let's think about that for a second. When we take medication, it's usually to address a symptom of imbalance in the body. The blood pressure is too high, the cholesterol is too high, et cetera, and it's to balance out an undesirable symptom. Now, while I can talk forever about the fact that I don't think pharmaceuticals of anything, for the sake of this illustration, it is to reduce an adverse symptom in the body. Sometimes doctors will even prescribe medications to address the side effects of meds that they put you on. For example, one classic one I see in my office all the time is I put you on birth control because you're having bleeding issues and now your blood pressure is too high, so let me give you a blood pressure medication like lisinopril. Okay? That is a common one that I see in my office. It is a slippery slope. The root of this idea though is that the medication is to address a symptom that is expressing itself in the body, and that is not what birth control does. It stops hormones from communicating as they were born to do. Okay? Your blood pressure medication is not telling your heart to not do its normal function. It's helping to improve its function. That is not what birth control is doing. Birth control literally blocks things from working as they are supposed to naturally. So, over enough time, symptoms can begin to accrue. It is really scary, some of the symptoms that women suffer with on birth control. If you haven't seen the documentary, The Business of Birth Control, Ricky Lake was one of the driving forces behind that process. I would documentary. It takes you through the history of how birth control came into being, how it works, and some of the undesirable things that come along with it. There are a lot of really great doctors on there. Aviva Ram is on there, Jolene Brighton, Nicole Jardim is on there. Like some of these really have, medical expertise that are saying, hey, we want to make you aware of what's going on inside your body when you do this thing. Okay. I would highly recommend watching it if you haven't seen it already. I thought that it really outlined the history and the evolution of birth control in a way that I had never seen depicted. So, again, highly recommend. But taking birth control can lead to mood disorders, clots, heart attacks, and a lot of other super scary things. So, did you know that birth control has a black warning label? Okay, so the FDA requires different types of warning labels on different types of products. And birth control has a black warning label. Do you know what else has a black warning label? Cigarettes. Yep. Most of the same risks up to and including death that are associated with cigarettes is also true for birth control. If any of you have heard my story in any other places, I'm honestly one of the lucky ones. And this is another reason why this is a general misconception amongst women who take birth control that, I'd really like to myth bust and dispel because I was one of the lucky ones who, despite being what I thought was an informed consumer at the time, I had a heart attack on birth control at 25. Listen, I was active. I was competitive with martial arts. I was going to the gym. I had literally been at the gym the day before PM class and I had weightlifted. And I woke up the next morning with chest pain and numbness in my arm that increased throughout the course of the day. At first, I thought maybe I just pinched something when I was working out last night. And as the day went along, I started having pain in my back. I had less sensation in my hand, get really scared. And I am so deeply grateful to the older woman who was the doctor on call that night when I was in the ER because the first question she asked me was if I was on birth control. And I told her yes. And then things started moving into motion really, really fast. And my life. I am here because of her. And I feel that it is part of my mission to share this kind of information so that you don't have to go through what I did. My whole practice, everything that I do in Moon Essence is so that you do not have to go through the garbage that I've been through. And I laugh when I say that, but it's so true. I don't want you to experience the negative symptoms of birth control. I don't want you to suffer with endometriosis. I don't want you to suffer with fertility challenges. I don't want you to feel like your body is betraying you at every turn because you don't know what's going on and you don't know where you can turn to for answers. My whole mission in my work is to help you at least know where to go for answers. and to learn about your body. You can take proactive steps to caring for yourself. I was one of the lucky ones because of that woman. But women take this medication for more menstrual reasons than typically for contraceptive reasons. I know I was one of those. I went on birth control at like 14 or 15. I went on birth control at like 14 or 15 because I was suffering from endometriosis symptoms, and that was the only solution that was offered to me. And I was so miserable and I couldn't function that I was like, sure, yeah, absolutely. I'll take whatever you're going to give me if it means I can go to school and function and participate as a if it means I can go to school and function and participate as a contributing member of society, of course I'm gonna take it, because I didn't know what I didn't know at the time, and a lot of people don't, and the longer that you take something like hormonal birth control, you're at a higher risk strokes, clots, mood disorders, deep vein thrombosis, long-term fertility challenges, and so much more. So if you are taking hormonal birth control, I invite you to go look at the little package insert. Yes, it's on rice paper with the tiniest font you could possibly interesting read. And it's good for you to know what it is that you are putting in your body. Remember, you are arresting hormone communication in your system. It takes a while for your body to come back online after taking it for a while. This can be super disheartening when people are trying to have a baby. Things that I've seen in my practice is women who've been on birth control for 10 plus years, right? Because you start taking it for cycle regulation as a teen, and then you're like, oh, well, now I'm sexually active, so I might as well just stay on it. It's quote unquote regulating my cycle, and I'm not getting pregnant. Cool. Meet the love of your life, and you want to try to have a baby with them, and then you're like, well, crap. The doctor told me I'd go off of it and I have one cycle and I can start trying. I'm like months or years into this now and I haven't been successful. This is a reality. And it's heartbreaking for me because medication like this leaches some critical nutrients that you need for fertility, like chromium, selenium, magnesium, zinc. When I work with people, I start helping to repopulate this and other things in the system that have helped the body to communicate with itself better and bring it back into right relationship so that you're ovulating regularly so that you can actually have a chance at trying to conceive. So, obviously, this is a topic I'm passionate about. It's something I could talk about for hours, but I want to leave you with this. If you are considering taking it, or if you are taking it, even, I want you to consider why you're on it. If it's for family planning reasons, there's lots of non hormonal ways of doing it. With a fertility awareness educator from Flow with Your Flow, to talk about how you can do this from a natural perspective. And yes, it does take practice, and I would highly suggest working with somebody like me or a fertility awareness educator if that's the way that you want to go so that you feel confident in what it is that your hormonal ways of doing it. A Kaya diaphragm is one of my favorite suggestions to people because you can literally only get pregnant 7 days out of the month. After that, you don't need any form of birth control. So, if it's for family planning reasons, you do have non-hormonal ways of doing it that really aren't as hard as they sound if you work with somebody who can help guide you. Okay. If you are on it for cycle related issues, there are lots of natural approaches to addressing your symptoms. Acupuncturists, holistic women's health practitioners, people who do pelvic steaming, people who do what I do. Okay. There are lots of people who are actually very good at helping address cycle related problems from a natural approach. I've had people come into my practice and like they want to emancipate themselves off of birth control, but they are super scared because they went on birth control, they've been able to live their life, but they know that there's something that feels off in their system and they would like to come off of it. I help them make that transition so that cramps aren't running their life. I have people who had super heavy bleeding And they're like, "Oh my gosh, like, I through everything, I can't go to work. Like, what do you mean, I should come off of this?" And so we talk about the risks and benefits, and then I say, "Well, listen, it's totally your choice, but I'm offering you a way to be able to support yourself in the best way possible. That's a natural approach that you don't have to worry about side effects like that." And then the decision is theirs. I've helped more people who bleed most of the month or have breakthrough bleeding. So they'll have their period, they'll go a few days without, they'll have like bleeding, like flow like bleeding in the middle of the month, then they'll go a week or so without, and then their period goes a week or so without, and then their period comes again. All those kinds of things. People who have that flash flood bleeding, they stand up and whoosh, down it comes, right? Those are oftentimes the people that are put on hormonal birth control. And anybody who is an Eastern medicine trained practitioner, acupuncturist and trained practitioner, acupuncturists, herbalists, people like me, holistic women's health practitioners, we know what to do for stuff like that. So please don't feel like you are at the mercy of this medication in order to get symptom relief. Now, when you're working with an Eastern practitioner, this is not an Amazon it's just not. And I'm full disclosure about that with my clients, but if you're willing to do the work, we get to the root of why it was happening for you in the first place to be able to address the symptoms. And then the symptoms go away and you're stronger and healthier and all of these things, okay? So my hope episode will highlight some of the risks that we don't talk about nearly enough when we're handed a script for a birth control pill and let you know that you have choices that are much greater for whatever your goals are beyond the pill. I hope this is helpful.
Thank you for joining. Productive Rebel is recorded by certified peri-steam hydrotherapist, herbalist, sound healer, and Chinese nutritional therapist Adrienne Irizarry of Moon Essence LLC. If you are interested in setting up an appointment with Adrienne for one-on-one support, ordering from our store, or checking out our course offerings, visit our website at moonessence.life. Be sure to subscribe to our newsletter to get insider information on upcoming events and offerings. Join the conversation. Like us and follow Moon Essence Me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn. It's me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn. Your voices make this program possible. Thank you all for your continued support.